everybody. So today we're going to take and learn about shading and shadow and all the different wonderful parts of making an apple. So if you've ever sketched before, you can always follow along, even if you know the terminology already, or if you're new here, then you can always take and listen to what I'm saying and do it step by step with me. So let's get started. First, you're going to start with a basic circle. And if you need help, you can always take and find a tool that can help you draw a circle, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Of course, if you're a little bit of a perfectionist, you can always take and do it however you like, but you always try to start with a circle when it comes to something like this, because it's going to matter whenever we get to doing, and if you ever make a mark like this or something like that, then don't worry about it. But what you're going to do is you're going to want to take and do your top, because an apple is not perfectly round. So you're going to want to take and give it kind of a little bit of a dip in the top like that. And then you're going to slowly fade into the side. And you're going to have to pardon the strange way that I'm having to move my pencil, because I am working around a stand that is blocking part of my hand, so bear with me. But as for this, you will have to take the bottom of your apple, and again, your apple is not going to be round, so you're going to want to take and kind of give it those quintessential dips that you know that an apple has. And you're going to want to take and bring your side down to meet your apple. And if you don't like the way it looks, like mine kind of looks like it's sitting sideways, if you don't like the way that looks, then you can always erase a piece of it and make it look like the other side. This is all part of the process. You just take and erase the part that you don't like. For me, I don't like that side, so I can make it a little bit smoother. And now it looks just a titch bit more even, which I just realized that y'all are a little bit crooked, so hold on 1 second. Let's see if we can get you into position here. There we are. All right, so that should help a little bit, at least for now anyway. Ta-da! Okay, so you're going to take and you're going to erase your inside lines, that first circle that we made, and take and just gently erase that out. Whenever you're doing your basic shapes to begin with, you want to start off with a very light hand, because you can always go back and add more. But as you can probably tell, you can still see that faint line where my circle was, and that's because I was just a little bit heavy-handed with what I was doing to begin with. So you definitely want to go lighter if you're doing that. But luckily, most things do erase out, and if they don't, then you can always cover them up with your shading later. So when it comes to drawing something that's a little bit realistic, you have to think in 3 dimensions. So you have what's closest to you, which will be the front part of the apple, and what's further away from you, like your stem and the little lip that'll be in front of the stem, because, you know, obviously your stem isn't just going to be floating in the middle, because that'll make it look very flat. So let's start off like you have your little dip in your apple. Never start at the very edge, because again, it'll make it look flat, so start away from the edge. And then just gently draw a line right there. And now it looks like there's a hole in it, see? So if you take and erase the line that's above it, directly above that hole, just a little bit, like so, then you can take and start at your line here, because you want this to come from inside the hole, not outside the hole. And you're going to take and draw you a little stem just like that, and you're going to take and bring the rest of the stem up here. And then what you're going to want to do is we're going to draw where the stem has come off of the tree. So you're going to want to take and draw you a little oval, just like that. Now, you can leave it like that, or if you want to add a leaf, you can always take and do this number here. You just erase a little piece of your stem, and you're just going to draw a little twig out like that. And then you're going to want to take, and I'm going to make mine curve down a little bit so that you can stay in frame here, because I have some stuff that's going to happen with shadowing and stuff down here, so I don't want to move y'all and then have to move y'all back. So you're going to take and draw a little line out to the side, and then you're going to take and draw a little bit of a wavy line up top like that. Now, this is the side / bottom of your leaf, and you're going to want your leaf to come up on the other side too. So what you're going to do is go ahead and do this number here, and it kind of looks like a pair of lips. So what we're going to do is, in a second, I'm going to show you how to shadow in there to make it look a little bit different, so it won't look like a pair of lips. It'll end up looking like a leaf. But for now, let's move on from the leaf and the stem, because now we've got our little mini horizon line there where your stem disappears into your apple. We've got the shape, and then we've got the leaf. So now, whenever you think of an apple, you think, okay, there's an apple. Is it sitting on something? Is it hanging from something? Obviously not, because it's not connected to anything, right? So we have to have it sitting on something. And whenever you are drawing something sitting on something, you have to make sure that your line where it's sitting on the object, whatever your object is touching, there's a darker line of shadow than anything else around it. And that's so that you know that it is making contact. So what you're going to do is, let's say from here to about here is going to be where it's touching the table. So you're going to want to take and draw this line where it's touching the table, which there would be a gap because this is a dip up, so you don't want to color in there quite. You're going to take and color those parts in. You know what, let's just say that this is a dip in instead of up, and we'll just take and go ahead and color that in as well. Alright, so that's where it's contacted your table. Now you have to think about what direction is your light source coming from. So think if it's a light bulb or the sun, then you would want it to come from whatever direction you want, but make sure you're keeping in mind where these objects that are supposedly above your apple, they're going to be blocking the light, so you have to make sure you put a shadow. So go ahead and we're going to mark out where our shadows are going to be if the light was coming from this direction here. Okay? So think about it coming this direction. You're going to have this and this, your stem and your leaf, that are going to be casting a shadow. So you're going to want to take and do your shadow there. And then you're also going to have this shadow here. And we're going to actually pull it out like that. And you might say, well, how do you know where the shadow is? Well, if it's coming from this direction, then it's going to be the bottom side of the object that you're seeing. So this part's going to be shadowed, and this part's going to be shadowed on the inside edge of that. And then you've got a shadow that's cast off from both of those things. Not to mention, you're also going to have your shadow coming from here, so you're going to want to start it from a little bit past that dark line, and you're going to want to come about, pretend like you're drawing a bush. And so, because this part where it's going up is not touching the table, it doesn't get colored darker, but all of this is your shadow. And then you have your shadows up here, okay? So you're going to take, and your entire apple, you're going to shade it by doing strokes. I like to take and mark off my lines of where everything's going to go. You're going to see it's kind of going to look like a kid's drawing of a pumpkin. And that is perfectly okay, because you kind of need to know what direction your pencil is going to move while you're shading. So you're going to want to take and slowly start following your lines. And if you get a couple of darker ones in there, that's perfectly fine, because I'm going to show you my personal favorite technique of shading, which is smudging. And so you're going to take and do this number here, I like to take and kind of color in towards my lines a little bit, and then I will slowly go back in and fill in. Think about if you've ever painted a wall or anything, how you go around and you do your trim work first usually, and then you go back in with your roller and you fill it back in. Okay, so we're going to stop right there for a second, and we're going to take and show you how to smudge. So whenever you have your lines there, it looks kind of grainy, and you see how it kind of like, it's all streaked and everything. Take your finger. You can use your first finger or your middle finger. I prefer my middle finger, so pardon me. But you take your finger and you just rub it back and forth. And gradually your lines are going to go away. See what I mean? Now you do that for the whole thing. And I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so let's mark back in our horizon line there for our little stem. And now let's smudge this whole thing. Whenever you smudge, you want to make sure that you're going in the direction of your lines. And when you get up here to the top, it's not quite as important. And I usually take and go ahead and go all around it because it gives this apple a little bit of a background. Okay, so now you've got your apple. Now, you notice that this side over here is a little bit darker than this side. Well, remember, this is the side that the light is on, so it's going to be lighter. So you're going to want to take your eraser and just slowly dab it all over the place, and you can see that it is starting to take the color out, and it's going to look like it's taking a lot of color out. And that is perfectly okay, because see how awful it looks? Now watch this. Just smudge it right back out. And now this side's starting to look a little bit lighter, but this side's darker. So you're going to want your shadow to come, we'll say about like that, but also this object is round, so you're going to want a shadow on the bottom. So you're going to want to take and do right there. And you can see this line here and this line going up here. Those are all shadow lines. So everything off to the side, pick a different direction than what you colored your lines on your apple. And you're going to take and do going in the opposite direction here. And this is called cross hatching, and I'm going to go over here to the side. Okay, so this is a directional, and then smudging, which we've already talked about for our, there it is, directional, and then you smudge it with your finger. We've already talked about that, but there's other types of shading as well. There's stippling, which is where you take and you do little itty-bitty dots, like so, and it creates a shadow there. But there's also cross hatching, where you go one direction with lines like that, and then you cross back the opposite direction with your lines like that. A lot of older illustrations do that, especially comic strips and stuff like that. This you don't see a ton of anymore, but it provides really good texture and stuff. But I personally, if I'm going to do a realistic thing where I have an object like an apple, then I like to do my directional lines and then smudge it. And that's just how I like to do it. So let's go ahead and finish smudging our shadow here. And let's go ahead and shade our stem because it's supposed to be darker than the apple anyway. So let's go ahead and do that. And then the stem for the leaf. And then you want to fade that one out a little bit. So let's go ahead and do our smudging for this. Now, notice that we're starting to lose our line of our apple. So you're going to want to go in and darken that just a little bit. I wouldn't say darken, I would say more like redefine your line of where this apple is, because that's the one downside of actually smudging, is that this line and all the lines around your object are going to slowly start to fade out, because if you think about it, you're rubbing the pigment off the paper, and so it'll slowly start to disappear. So you want to make sure you keep darkening the stuff that you're smudging if you're wanting to keep that detail, especially when it comes to the shape of your object, because that is one of the first things to go. So just slightly darken that. Now, this harsh line at the bottom is where you're going to start to smoke that out a little bit. It's actually going to get smoked out even more because we're getting ready to do this shadow here. Just go ahead and kind of roughly sketch it out. You don't really have to have it super even or anything because it's a really random shape anyway, but you're going to take and smoke that out, smudge it, like so. And usually I'll take from there and I will draw me out a line if it's meant to be sitting on something like that. And so now it looks like it's sitting on something and there's supposed to be light coming from this direction. So now, shiny stuff. You're actually going to want to take and darken your leaf first. So let's go ahead and darken this little booger. And let's just barely do the top part, like that. Now, let's take and put that line back in there, like that. And actually, let's do that there. Now, you're going to have some type of shiny spot because apples are usually shiny, so you're going to erase right there. And you have to think about your shadows again. So let's do shadow coming this direction with our leaf coming over here like so. And smudge it just a little bit. Now, we still have a line here and here around the top edge. You're going to have some over here, like that. And let's go ahead and add just a teeny one right there. Now, go ahead and you can just lightly rub these so that they're not quite so perfect. That one went just a little bit too light. Okay, so there's that. And now you can go ahead and lighten up a part of your stem if you need to, or if you darken the top of your leaf too much, you can go in and erase that out. Or if you don't like a part of it that you want to take out, like maybe my stem's a little bit on the chubby side, you can take that back out and then just go ahead and scratch out a new line and do it all over again. The thing about art is people always say that they're not talented about it, but it's not necessarily that they're not talented. They just don't feel like they're on the same level as everybody else. But everybody starts on the exact same level, which is ground zero. Some people have more of an intuition for stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your art is bad. It just means that you need to practice a little more. And that's perfectly okay. And you notice that I keep piddling with my shapes and everything, and it's because I'm honestly never satisfied, but that's just how art works. It's not done until you say it's done. So it can be as simple or as advanced as you want to. And I really like my apple. Is it my favorite apple that I've ever done? Probably not, but it worked, and it looks like an apple. And I hope this little guide to how to draw an apple helps you. If not, but hopefully this whole thing right here gave you some ideas. Even if it doesn't teach you anything super special, at least you got some drawing practice out of it. So remember your different types of shading, and also remember that you're looking for your lighting and your shadow. And remember that you're creating a 3D object. So there's usually something behind this object, which is why we faded in this line and that line, so that you have your plane of vision goes off. And that's also the reason that you have your shadows, because that makes it 3-dimensional instead of completely flat. Because I can draw an apple up here like that, and then draw a line behind it, and it'll look like this. It doesn't really look anything but flat. But then suddenly you start adding your shading to it like that, and a shadow here, and you take and you draw your lines here and draw your little horizon line with this going in it. Suddenly it's a little 3D apple. It's just as simple as that. So I hope that y'all had a good time. I hope you got some good practice out of it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.